Last night, you spent 2 hours deciding what to wear to the party. This morning, it'll take you 2 minutes to list it on Depop and make your money back. Just grab your phone, snap a few photos, and we'll take care of the rest. The sheer dress and platform heels you'll never wear again? There's a birthday girl searching for them right now. Your one-and-done look is about to pay for your next night out. Or at least the ride home. Your style can make you cash. Start selling on Depop, where taste recognizes taste.
But you know, happiness can be found even in the darkest of times. If one only remembers to turn on the light.
It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to your enemies, but a great deal more to stand up to your friends.
The ones that love us never really leave us.
Working hard is important, but there's something that matters: believing in yourself. If they can do it, why not us?
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. Today we're covering another tale from Beedle the Bard. This one is entitled The Fountain of Fair Fortune. Elizabeth is with us.
Hello, everyone.
And Elizabeth, you requested this story.
Mostly because it features a fountain, and I'm a sucker for water features, so I'm really excited.
Fair enough. But before we get to Fountain of Fair Fortune, we do have a couple of shout-outs to get to. The first one is from Sandhya, who leaves a comment on Cursed Child, Act 4, Scenes 9 through 11. Sandhya says, "Thanks for the shout-out on my Order of the Phoenix rant. To clarify, I felt like too many loopholes for getting to the Ministry. But I agree. Once they got there and we get over the zero security, all the Department of Mystery parts were awesome, and Sirius's archway end was beautifully sad. But here, the lack of, quote, means of communication, end quote, like between Harry and Sirius or Harry and the Order, is what annoys me."
I think I remember this conversation that the two of us had. We were talking about Order of the Phoenix in general, and the idea that the lack of communication just leads to such, like, drastic outcomes sometimes. And I think for me, it still just boils down to that mirror. If Sirius had properly explained what it was, I get he was in a rush when he gave it, but maybe give it 5 minutes earlier. And if Harry had just opened the package the way you do when you are given a gift, he could have seen the note and they could have talked to each other. And it just makes me sad that there was all those conversations that they could have had, but they never did.
Yeah, a lack of communication plays a frequent part in a lot of storytelling, no matter the media, whether it's written or visual, like television shows or movies. Lack of communication always seems to play a pivotal role in some way, shape, or form. However, that does not inhibit my enjoyment of Order of the Phoenix. I still love the book. But yes, there are flaws to the book. I'm not going to say it's a perfect book.
It leads to more angst, but I'm here for it. So
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Sandhya, for the comment. As always, we appreciate it. Viana is the other comment that we have for you all today. And Viana's comment comes from Sorcerer's Stone, Chapter 9, The Midnight Duel.
Ooh, way back when. Okay.
Yes. Viana says, "After reading the books and watching the movie, and then rereading the books over and over again, I personally imagine everything my own way with hints of the cast. Because I read first, I took that, and then the movies kind of implied itself upon it. So when I imagine everything, it's my own way. Also, I'm a Hufflepuff. Love the podcast."
Ooh, shout out to the Hufflepuffs out there. You got another one. I love the fact that you have your own imagined versions of the characters, but also kind of the bleed through with the cast. I think for me, when I read it, I still have my own visuals that I had originally had when I first read the series. And I think that's just because it's been so long for me since I saw the movies. I know Dan's going to try to change that sooner rather than later, but I think it's nice that you can have both aspects and appreciate both mediums.
For me, I very much identify with Viana here because my imagination surrounding a reread with the books is a combination and just a mixture of different things. I still have the foundations of my original imagination when I first read the books. Mm-hmm. And then I also have some of the movies bleed into that a little bit, whether it's some of the characters or some of the settings. Side tangent, I think that's a credit to the work done by the actors and the set designers and all the people that worked on those movies, that they did some parts of those movies so well that people are like, ooh, yeah, that is actually a good Bellatrix, or that's a good Snape, or that's a great Hall, or they did Diagon Alley so well, or whatever your imagination or your concept was. And I think that's really cool. If I wanted a part of media to impart itself more on my imagination, it would actually be Hogwarts Legacy, the video game.
Yeah.
I think they did Hogwarts very, very well. It makes sense. It's nice to see a continuous setting of the castle and kind of flow in and out of rooms and hallways and see it as a whole thing.
See it as a school.
Yeah.
You know, like I get with obviously movie sets, or with the HBO series coming up, the TV sets, you can't always have practical filming locations. And at least with the video game, you're right. Like, you see every brick that was laid, every lantern that is lit. Like, you see every tiny detail that if you were a student there, you could also appreciate. So I think it does immerse you way more. So it's cool to have that imagination bleed in with that.
For sure. To your point, it's hard for that to even bleed in because of the original foundation of my imagination, and the movies play such a huge role.
I think for me, the biggest bleed through is honestly just the theme song. I love the John Williams theme for Harry Potter. It's so great.
It's iconic for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for the comment. Thank you for the thoughts. We really do appreciate them. If you have a thought or a comment or a suggestion or anything you want to hear from us or hear us comment on, let us know. You can let us know by commenting on any of our social medias. That's Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram. We have a YouTube page. You can find all of our socials at HogwartsAPod. You can even leave us a comment on Spotify by finding our episodes, scrolling down on it, and leaving a comment there. If you do go to our episodes and scroll down, you'll also find a poll. And those polls are really interesting, and we love seeing the results of those. So please do yourself a favor, do us a favor, and participate in those polls. And we'll talk about them on the podcast from time to time. And we do have episodes planned in the future to specifically go over those polls. So participate in those. But as always, thank you guys for listening and engaging with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Now, we have a tale to get to.
I apologize in advance for how many references I make to other bits of literature and media, because this reminded me of so many things. I was so excited while reading it.
I also actually thought of you while reading this multiple times.
Because it's very fitting to me.
This is right up your alley, yes. So again, the tale that we have for you today is The Fountain of Fair Fortune. And this tale begins with a once-a-year event. And once a year, a person would venture to the Fountain of Fair Fortune, which sits high on a hill in an enchanted garden enclosed by tall walls and protected by strong magic. If they happen to fight their way to bathe in the waters, they'll receive fair fortune forevermore. All would gather for the chance to gain access to this garden. Male, female, rich, poor, young, old, magical, and non-magical, which I find interesting.
I do too.
So I really enjoy this. Before we get on and continue, I really enjoy this setup. It screams fairy tale right from the very beginning.
Yes, 100%.
I mean, it sets you in the scene of, okay, this is a fairy tale, and I like the idea of anyone is eligible for this, even if they're non-magical.
Yeah, that people would recognize that this has some kind of magic to it that could help literally everyone. It's kind of like the tale you just had with the hopping pot, right? Like, magic is supposed to be helping all people, not just the magical. So the muggles get
can't discriminate now.
You can't discriminate. Did it give you vibes of the Triwizard Tournament with the third task? Because I was just getting the sense of like, oh, everyone's waiting. We're waiting for Ludo Bagman to be like, and enter. And just like zooming into this like labyrinth that we have behind the garden wall.
I will give you the spectacle of it does remind you of the Triwizard Tournament for sure. Yeah. Interesting start to this little story.
Yeah, everyone's so excited. It gives me happy vibes.
So, 3 witches meet on the outer edge of this crowd that's gathering to try to get their fortunes made. And they're each telling each other about their specific woes, about why they need this fair fortune. And the first witch, named Asha, was sick, and no healer could cure, hoping the fountain would banish her symptoms and give her a long, happy life. Althea, the second witch, was robbed of her home, her gold, and her wand by an evil sorcerer. So she is hoping to be relieved of powerlessness and poverty. Amata is the third witch, and she was heartbroken and worried that her heart would never mend after the loss of her love. Hoping to be relieved of grief and longing, she searches for fair fortune.
Okay, I immediately have to ask the most natural question. Which witch had it worse?
Okay. So I don't love to compare traumas. Because everybody's trauma is real to themselves.
It's very similar to the Deathly Hallows question, though, right? Like, which Hallow would you want? Which of the 3 would be, like, the worst thing for you specifically?
I think these 3 are meant to be very relatable. Mm-hmm. So everybody, to some extent, has not felt well. Obviously, this is a pretty grievous illness.
Right.
Like, this is a pretty serious illness that has her, on the doorstep of death. And hopefully, not many people have experienced that's listening to this. Hopefully, we're all healthy and good. Mm-hmm. But everybody's been sick, and everybody has felt that feeling of just drain, and you just feel awful. Mm-hmm. And you want, even if it's something as simple as a runny nose. I took for granted how great it was not to have a runny nose.
Or even not maybe physical, like mental illnesses too.
Sure.
Could be also
like an
thing.
Alzheimer's type of thing or something
or
like
just
that.
in general depression, like all that,
Sure.
all that anxiety, no matter what it is that you're feeling, it's still going to affect you.
So, I mean, that's one that people can relate to. And then obviously, Althea with being robbed of her possessions is something obviously people can relate to, but if we're going to tie it back to the wizarding world specifically and that idea of powerlessness that she's trying to get rid of, losing her wand is essentially her identity.
Yeah.
Like, that is her sense of self and sense of security.
Same thought.
And then obviously with Amata, I think maybe most commonly people have had a crush or a love interest that has either rejected them or left them in whatever way they did. Mm-hmm. And I think it's natural to have that feeling of, oh, the love of my life just left me. I'm never going to be happy again. I'm never going to find someone ever again. I'm going to be alone forever. And the heartache and the hurt of that, I think a lot of people have felt. So to answer that question, I think all 3 of them are worthy of being individually very, very bad.
There's definitely a reason for all 3 of them to be here, hoping to seek the fair fortune from the fountain.
Well, they would agree that all 3 of them are worthy of the benefits of the fountain. So they agree that if they get the chance, they will unite to try to get to the fountain together. Okay? So as we're getting ready to start this experience, as dawn is approaching, because this is on the longest day of the year, so as dawn is approaching, creepers from the garden snake through the crowd, and they twist around the ankles of Asha. Creepers, for those confused, are like long vine-like things. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's not like
not like literal creeper be like, hey, come here, child.
Right, it's not like an individual or something like that, but
And also the wall to the garden opened up. They said that it's like a little chink in the wall for them to come through. So it's obviously a very small space because we don't want all the crowd sneaking their way through.
It seems as though the garden is specifically choosing.
Yeah, I got that vibe.
So the creepers come around the ankles of Asha. Asha then grabs Althea, who grabbed Amada, who was then caught on the armor of a dismal-looking knight on a bone-thin horse that happened to be next to her. All 4 of them end up disappearing through the wall and into the garden. And obviously, as we just discussed, only one of them may actually use the fountain, so the witches begin to yell at Amada for bringing in a 4th person to compete with them here, and one that they had not originally agreed upon. And this competitor is named Sir Luckless. And Sir Luckless was not magical, not skilled at jousting or dueling with swords, and honestly, not really distinguishable in any way whatsoever. He, however, is shrewd enough to at least recognize, hey, I don't do magic and I'm stuck with 3 witches. I'm probably not going to win this race to the fountain. I'll just back out. I'll leave. How about that? And Amada is the one to challenge him to help them all toward their goal. So they begin their journey.
So to continue my count of things this reminded me of, 2 things. First is the book The Maze Runner, which I think is fresh in my brain because my seniors were just reading dystopian novels, and The Maze Runner is one of them. So the idea of going into this tall maze where it's literally attacking you and there's the vines everywhere, that kind of stuff. If you're a fan of that book or if you've seen the movie, that's what I'm basically imagining. It also gave me, on a sillier note, the impression of like Black Friday, with everyone rushing at the same time, trying to push and shove their way into this small little hole in the wall. Like, I know Black Friday isn't as crazy as it used to be when we were growing up, but just those images of people shoving, trying to get to their fair fortune, and the idea of her, Amada, getting stuck on somebody else. I'm like, yeah, I could totally see that happening on Black Friday. Absolutely. That said, though, I love the fact, once again, that it's the 3 witches seeking out the fortune and the knight being the one who's like, yeah, I don't stand a chance. But what I love even more is the fact that Amada, like you said, she both chides him for having a faint heart, but also encourages him and is like, look, help us reach our goals. And the fact that magical women are seeking out help from a muggle like they are equals to each other. I found that very interesting, considering this is supposed to be a fairy tale from the Wizarding World.
To be fair, they weren't super happy about it. They're just like, well, I guess this is the situation we find ourselves in, but...
Yeah, but she was also like, draw your sword, help us out. Like, you have a sword, 2 of us have wands. You would think a sword is nothing in comparison, but they still are, yeah, Sir Knight, help us out. Granted, I don't know if they know that his name is Sir Luckless, but... That's a minor detail,
Yeah, that name is a little on the nose, don't you think? Whatever. They go on this journey. The journey was actually pretty easy until they reach the base of the hill where the fountain is located. Around the hill is a monstrous white worm, bloated and blind. And it faces these individuals and says, "Pay me the proof of your pain." Sir Luckless is like, you know what? I ain't dealing with this, and attempts to slay the beast outright. However, his blade snaps, which, again, pretty on the nose for Luckless there. Althea casts rocks at it, while Asha and Amada cast every spell that could subdue or entrance. However, they're unsuccessful. By the way, I just want to point out that once again, Althea is the one without the wand, so casts can confuse people.
Yeah, no, she's throwing
She's not
those rocks.
Summoning rocks and like propelling rocks. She's literally picking rocks up and like throwing them, just to eliminate any possible confusion there. They were also unsuccessful, so the worm would not let them pass. Asha, brought to tears over this failure, begins to weep. And eventually, the worm looks to Asha and begins to drink the tears, what is described as off of her face, which is...
Yeah, face to face was a little too close for comfort.
Yeah, that is personal space, worm. Come on. But begins to drink the tears off of her face. At this, the worm becomes satisfied and moves to the side. They continue their journey.
Okay, once again, I think I'm reading this at the perfect time in the school year because this reminds me of two other things. It reminds me of my favorite, Edgar Allan Poe. He has a poem called The Conqueror Worm, which this worm immediately gave me the visual of.
Wow, that's on the nose too.
Oh, it's so good. Read it if you have never read it. But basically in the poem, it's about a worm who is supposed to symbolize death. And the worm essentially feeds upon all human beings. And because it's Poe, of course, it's very macabre and, very sad and depressing. But basically it's like, yeah, human hope cannot exist. All humans die and decay. Your life is meaningless. The end. So this worm feeding on her pain and her misery and taking joy out of it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's just like Poe. The other thing it reminded me of is the story that my sophomores were just reading, which is the Joy Luck Club. If you're familiar with it, there's a story called Magpies, where there's these birds who drink up the tears of someone who's in a lot of pain and misery, similar to Asha in this story. And the idea being that other people can take joy from your pain, so you should try to hide it away. And I find it interesting that in this story, it's the exact opposite lesson. It's you have your pain, and I need you to cry it out of you so that I can get it and take it off of you, take it away from you, free you from your pain. That was the thing that allowed them to move further in this trial, so to speak. So I thought that the opposite take on, you cry your tears. I thought that was really interesting.
Well, halfway up the hill, they come across words cut into the ground. These words say, "Pay me the fruit of your labors." Again, Luckless is the first to try this here, and he takes out his only coin that he has left to him.
I feel so bad for
which
him.
Then ends up rolling away down the hill and ends up getting lost. They say, well, that was as good a guess as any as to what this could mean, so let's just keep on walking. And they continued to walk for hours. However, they had not advanced one single step. Althea walked the hardest and the fastest, and continued to walk the hardest and the fastest, ultimately wiping sweat from her brow. Well, the sweat hits the ground, and as it hits the ground, the inscription vanishes, and they were able to move again.
I feel so bad for Sir Luckless. Does he give you the vibe of a Sir Duncan from the Game of Thrones spin-off series?
Either Sir Duncan or Sir Cadogan.
Yeah.
I think he resembles more Sir Cadogan if we're sticking with the wizarding
It's
world
just
theme.
constant failures. I feel so bad for him.
He tries.
And
I give him credit for that. He's brave enough to be like, hey, look, I'm going to put myself out there, and I'm going to try. Mm-hmm. And it's just really, really, as his name would imply, unfortunate.
I'm also very intrigued by this magic that the garden is doing on them, where you can keep walking and walking and walking for hours and see your destination in the distance and not be able to progress any further. And I don't know what kind of magic that would be, what kind of spell that would be, because it's both like an optical illusion and it's also just like you haven't paid your sweat yet, so you can't go forward. It's just this garden is just so cool. I don't know.
To your point earlier about the Triwizard Tournament, like the spectacle that was the crowd outside, these almost seem like the Triwizard Tournament trials.
Yeah.
Where they're each testing a different part of you in some way, shape, or form.
It's kind of like Agatha All Along, from Disney. Like the
Witch's Road?
The Witch's Road, and having each witch's trial, and like, this is what you have to do, and you cannot move forward until you do it. So figure out my little riddle.
Right. Well, eventually, the fountain does come into sight. However, before they can reach it, there is a stream that they must cross, and it blocks their way. There is a stone with writing on it in the creek. The stone says, "Pay me the treasure of your past." Once again, Luckless tries his luck and attempts to float across the stream with his shield, but it sinks. The witches end up saving him from the stream, attempt to leap over it, but also fail. After pondering for a while, Amata begins to draw memories of her past lover that left her and drops the memories into the stream, almost like a pensieve. Mm-hmm. Which then provides stepping stones that they can just walk across to continue their journey.
I'm glad that this is the third obstacle, because I don't know if I would have gotten it if it had been the first one. I feel like the pay me the proof of your pain I could probably get, because I would probably just cry out of frustration. I feel like you would be able to get the pay me the fruit of the labor just because your job literally is so physical, so you're going to naturally sweat. But the idea of pay me the treasure of your past, I don't know if I would have come up with the idea of let me put happy memories into the stream. But I like the fact that the memories she puts are the happy ones of her vanished lover. And when the stepping stones appear, it's almost like by giving the sacrifice of your happy memories to the water and for it to wash it away, the water returns back to you a gift of stepping stones to help you move past this heartbreak that she's
You're literally
going
moving
through.
on.
Yeah, literally. And it's a really cool visual to have.
Absolutely. So they now arrive at the Fountain of Fair Fortune, and they are now deciding who will get the benefits of it. Mm-hmm. Before they can make their decision, however, Asha falls to the ground, exhausted, close to death. Althea hastened to pick up herbs from the area that might help her and brewed them in Luckless's water gourd. So like a cauldron and a potion of sorts.
Mm-hmm. Make it medicine.
Yep. Once Asha ingested the potion, she stood up immediately, all of her symptoms gone. She no longer needs a cure, and she votes for Althea to bathe in the fountain. Althea, however, had a different view. She's still collecting herbs. And she says, hey, look, I just cured an incurable disease. If I can do that, I can make these potions for other people and get crazy rich.
Yeah.
So I don't really need the fountain because I got what I want.
Capitalize on it, girl.
Absolutely. So she votes for Amata to go bathe. Amata says that the stream had washed away all of her regrets for her lost love, and now she sees that he was actually a cruel and faithless individual. Luckless must be the one to bathe. What do you think of that so far?
I love it. I truly do. I love the fact that all three of them have already had their wishes granted without even having to touch the fountain. But even more than that, I love the fact that they recognize they no longer need the fountain, because I feel like there are a lot of people out there who would be selfish and still desire the fountain for themselves just because it has such a lure to it. So even if they had succeeded in finding the herbs to get wealthy, having your disease cured, getting rid of your heartache, or whatever other misfortune might be falling upon you, to be able to recognize that you no longer need it and it is a gift for somebody else, I think that shows greatness in humanity. And the fact that these witches put that honor aside onto a muggle, Sir Luckless, like, that is very cool. I really like this a lot.
Yeah, I also like the idea that they acknowledged what was their ailment or what was their missing piece to their happiness. And then when they got it, they recognized oh, this solves my problem.
Yeah. Like,
I'm
good.
good with that.
Yeah.
Like you said, they don't get greedy with it and try to get more.
And I think a lot of times in fairy tales, particularly what I'm thinking of are the Grimm fairy tales, you see a lot of characters who do opt for the greedy version of things. And a lot of times they end up getting cursed in really dark ways. So the fact that these three did not go that option, did not get cursed by the fountain, it still keeps the fountain pure, I think. And I think that's important for this tale.
So they vote for Luckless to go into the fountain. Luckless accepts that invitation, and he eventually emerges from the waters and throws himself immediately at Amada's feet, for she is the kindest, most beautiful woman that he'd ever met. Amada also is delighted by this because she has now found a man who is worthy of both her hand and her heart. Luckless, through this entire story, has been meek, has been humble, has been brave, because he's tried to solve the problems. He just wasn't able to. And the fact that he kept failing and then continuing to try is admirable.
Yeah.
So
And
I think there's a lot of things Luckless does bring to the table. It's just he has been unlucky.
And for Amada to have this man be humble in front of her and clearly not be cruel or like faithless the way her previous lover had been, for him to literally kneel in front of her, beg for her hand and her heart, and be like, you are amazing, like that, I think also adds to his attractiveness to Amada.
Well, remember, it was also Amada that encouraged him to even stay on this path.
Right. So I love the fact that that's the witch that he ends up going for. I think it's also very nice to see that full circle stylistic writing where everyone gets what they want.
All four do indeed leave the garden and lived long, happy lives. However, they never actually realized that the fountain carried no enchantment at all.
Doesn't that just make you happy? Just like make you smile?
It is a really nice, satisfying fairy tale,
Yeah.
I think. To your point, the circle writing with a lot of the Amada and Luckless bits specifically.
And everything is structured in threes. Fairy tales love to structure in like sets of three.
Absolutely. But obviously, I think the best part of this story is the fact that the enchantment is not there. Like, the fountain is just...
It's normal.
The fountain is normal. The journey to get there is what really changed these people.
Yeah.
And changed their whole lives and changed their dynamic, which is, you know, you can interpret that a million different ways, and it's great every single one of those ways.
Not to make another reference to another thing, but to also do exactly that. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, with going and picking the cup at the end from the knight and discovering that it wasn't the fanciest of cups. It wasn't the gold cup. It was like the simple cup. That's the one you need to drink the water from. It kind of reminds me of that because it's just like, yeah, this is a simple water. This is a simple fountain. And if you discover, like you said, the journey along the way, you discover the true magic of humanity and just the trials and tribulations that come with living. That said, though, the picture of the fountain, if you look closely at it, the fountain has 4 different levels to it. On the very bottom basin, there's the symbol of the Deathly Hallows, which I thought was a very nice touch, obviously, because the Beedle. On the third one down, there's an eye. The second one down, there's an Omega symbol. And then at the top, there's this combination of a sun and also like a crescent moon. And I looked at this up, and it said that that was the alchemical symbol for platinum, which I thought was interesting. Around the basin, the one with the Deathly Hallows symbol, there's different runes, although I couldn't find what the translation was supposed to be. And then above those 4 symbols, there's also symbols that are supposed to be representative of the planets Mars, Jupiter, Mercury, and Saturn, which I also thought was interesting because it seems like this fountain, even though it's so simple, there also does seem to be this magic associated with it of both the planets, the stars, the Deathly Hallows, a lot of the runes. And it's interesting to me that they would put that on the fountain. And I was thinking maybe it was more, that aspect of the magic was more for the garden than it was for the actual water within, because it did say the water is just water. But I wonder if the fountain is a thing that is really controlling the garden that gave them the trials.
The through line, the stand for the fountain is also a dragon.
Yeah.
Which
is very
is a very
cool.
strong magical beast.
Yeah.
I think the magic of the garden is intriguing because it seems to be very potent, very strong magic. Mm-hmm. And at that, I would go a step further and say that it is not a mistake that the creepers surrounded one of the witches. We'll not even say just specifically Asha, but like one of the witches who had already made a pact to help each other out through this.
It's almost like the garden heard that pact and was like, all right, you guys are worthy.
Yeah, kind of. It was almost like a specific Mjolnir type of situation with like, you are worthy for this. You are worthy for this magic.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's a really cool story. I actually really, really enjoyed this.
Didn't you say this was J.K. Rowling's favorite?
It is. She had a quote about this in one of her interviews. She said that The Fountain of Fair Fortune is my favorite one, and that's really about the qualities you need to achieve your heart's desire. The moral being that magic ultimately is not your best weapon.
Very cool for a wizarding fairy tale, because I do think a lot of the wizarding families, if you were to imagine them reading this to their children, to have the moral at the end be something that I think could also apply to muggles, it's very satisfying.
Oh, I'm sure it upset quite a few wizards and witches to have the muggle get the full benefits of the fountain, even though, again, in the story, the fountain is not actually giving benefits.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there was a lot of uproar about, like, hey, wait, the muggle can't get it. But here we go. So we will pause here, and we will get to what Albus Dumbledore thinks of the story after break. So we will be right back. Before we get to our break sound, I'd like to acknowledge our friend Andy, who helps us produce our intros and our break sounds. If you want to hear more of Andy's work and like Formula One racing, check out the Outlap F1 podcast. It's your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. You can find them wherever you listen to podcasts, and they even have a YouTube page. So check out Andy and Cody and join them on the Outlap.
K-pop Demon Hunters, Haja Boy's breakfast meal and Huntrix meal have just dropped at McDonald's. They're calling this a battle for the fans. What do you say to that, Rumi?
It's not a battle. So glad the Saja boys could take breakfast and give our meal the rest of the day.
It is an honor to share.
No, it's our honor.
It is our larger honor.
No, really. Stop.
You can really feel the respect in this battle. Pick a meal to pick a side.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. At participating McDonald's while supplies last.
I love magic.
All right, so we are back with part 2 of this episode, which features Albus Dumbledore's commentary on the tale Fountain of Fair Fortune. Albus starts off his commentary by stating that this is a perennial favorite, specifically of former herbology professor Herbert Berry. What a name for herbology. Herbert Berry, Beery.
Well, he's got the herb part, so.
Well, it's twofold. Herbert Berry, spelled Beery. It's like berry, as in like plants.
Right.
But also bee, as in like the little insect bee that then pollinates said plants. It's a very clever last name.
All the names are always so related to their subjects.
Anyway, perennial favorite, specifically of former herbology professor Herbert Berry. So much so that Herbert wanted to adapt it into a Christmas pantomime treat for staff and students. Dumbledore at this point gives a little footnote that British tradition of plays at Christmas based on fairy tales exists, so that's part of this. Also, in the footnote is that Professor Berry ended up leaving Hogwarts to teach at WADA, W-A-D-A, also known as the Wizarding Academy of Dramatic Arts.
Lockhart should have gone there.
He really should have.
He would have been the star pupil there.
Yeah, he really missed his calling. Very much so. It is there that he maintained a strong aversion to performances of this story, believing it to be unlucky.
It gave me Macbeth vibes, because you're not supposed to say Macbeth in a theater. It's bad luck. You're supposed to call it the Scottish play. But it makes sense why he considers it's bad luck, considering the story Dumbledore's about to tell.
Albus tells a very awesome story, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, this is top-notch Albus Dumbledore storytelling.
It makes me sad that we didn't get more stories like this in the series.
They're fantastic.
I just want to hear Dumbledore Hour.
Elizabeth, this is what I was talking about with give me all the content, okay? Give me all the Wizarding World of Harry Potter content, because this story that Albus is about to tell is just everything.
Yeah.
So, Albus says that as a young transfiguration teacher, as he was once asked by Barry to do a special effects setup for the performance of Fountain of Fair Fortune, which included a fully functioning Fountain of Fair Fortune, as well as a miniature grassy hill that would eventually sink into the stage and out of sight as the characters would climb it.
Which is so cool, that illusion that you have this hill and it makes it look like they're climbing the hill as they're getting closer and closer and closer. Like, this would be impressive magic to see.
It would be impressive magic just generally, but this is a whole line of wizarding professions that is fascinating to me. Also, could you imagine in Hollywood, like, all of the witches or wizards that could work in special effects?
It'd be so cool.
It'd be crazy.
It'd be so, so, so cool.
Could you imagine if Penn and Teller were actual wizards? Doing their show in Vegas.
Wasn't there a Marvel What If episode that was kind of like that with like Agatha and somebody else where they were like making magic in Hollywood or something like that?
It was Agatha, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think this is so cool, and I love the fact that he pats himself on the back being like, I think I did a good job. It was pretty all right. It worked well.
Yes, Albus does indeed believe his work was pretty good. However, the rest of the cast, they were lacking. He notes that Professor Sylvanus Kettleburn provided a gigantic, quote-unquote, worm, which had some antics about it. Kettleburn, nice name drop. We do know that Kettleburn was the Care of Magical Creatures professor prior to Hagrid.
Right. Who were tired to spend more time with their
remaining limbs, yes. So, Dumbledore gets into all of the cast drama that surrounded this production.
I love this so much.
He is dropping all the tea. I mean, he's just spilling it all over, okay?
Which is so realistic because, yes, to tell all of you out there, we teachers sometimes love the tea and we hear a lot of it, and it's very entertaining.
I can imagine him just going into the teacher's lounge after this and being like, will you believe what just happened? You guys don't even know. You think you know, you don't know.
That's what I heard.
So, the cast drama starts with the students that were playing Amata and Luckless were actually dating. Until about 1 hour before the curtain rose, when Luckless decided that he wanted to switch his affections to the young lady playing Asha.
Ooh, scandalous.
Scandalous indeed. Also, really, an hour before?
Yeah, perfect timing, sir.
Horrible timing. Anyway, the curtain had barely risen when the, again, quote-unquote, worm, now revealed to be an actual ashwinder, with an engorgement charm placed upon it, exploded in a shower of hot sparks and dust, which showered the Great Hall with smoke and scenery.
Now, I had to look up what an Ashwinder is because obviously we haven't done our Fantastic Beasts episodes yet, and I don't remember seeing this creature in the series. It said it's a thin, pale gray magical serpent with these glowing red eyes, and it's born from the dying embers of an unchecked magical fire. So that's kind of Phoenix vibe.
So I can definitely see where Kettleburn gets the idea of like, hey, monstrous worm.
Make it big.
This could work.
Yeah.
This could work.
Especially because it says it only lives for about 1 hour. So you'd be like, okay, an hour performance.
Now, see, that's questionable.
I feel like magic always has weird 1 hour limits, you know?
Just weird limits in general.
Weird limits. But it lives for about an hour, and in that hour, like right before it dies, it lays these burning hot eggs in dark, secluded places before turning to dust. And those eggs, which I thought was really interesting, they're valuable. The eggs are used in love potions and as a cure for ague, A-G-U-E, and for wit sharpening potions.
Yeah, like Elizabeth said, we will tackle Fantastic Beasts and where to find them in the future. So we'll dive more into the Ashwinder at that point in time. But there is a footnote about Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. And basically, it's a suggestion that this particular beast should never be introduced into a wood-paneled room, nor have an engorgement charm placed upon it.
Yeah, you would think a Care of Magical Creatures teacher would know better, but then I suppose we're used to dealing with Hagrid, so maybe it's just a trait of the profession.
Elizabeth, he got caught up in the magic of theater.
Theater!
Yes. Don't you dare dim his spotlight. Don't you dare dim his spotlight.
He was trying to compete with Dumbledore. That's what was going on.
So rude.
He wanted to show off.
He probably did. As Elizabeth mentioned, the eggs are important to an Ashwinder. Under this engorgement charm, these enormous fiery eggs it had laid eventually ignited the floorboards. While that's happening, Amata and Asha turned on each other, dueling fiercely, and they ended up catching Herbert Barry in the crossfire of this dueling match between these two ladies.
What do you think was hotter, the fire from the Ashwinder or the fire between these two?
Probably the fire between these two. There's probably a little bit of heat behind that. So, naturally, the Great Hall is then evacuated as an inferno rages inside of it, which could be, seriously speaking for a second, could be very dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be actually legitimately endangering the lives of students and staff.
I feel so bad for the Great Hall. I wish we could have a history of just the things it has seen.
So, obviously, this led to a packed hospital wing and several months of a pungent burnt wood aroma in the Great Hall. Now, eventually, Herbert Barry's head was reproportioned to its normal size.
How's that for a sentence? Took several months.
And Kettleburn was put on probation and thus taken off of it eventually. And there's another footnote on that. The footnote says that Professor Kettleburn survived no fewer than 62 periods of probation during his time as teacher. His relationship with then headmaster Armando Dippet was predictably strained. And Dippet particularly thought Kettleburn was reckless. Sounds familiar. Kettleburn mellowed out considerably by the time Albus's tenure came around. That might or might not be due to the fact that he only had 1.5 of his original limbs remaining by that point. Like, he might have been forced to be less reckless.
There's only so few limbs you can lose.
The debate rages. But Kettleburn is an interesting Care of Magical Creatures professor because I think the impression that we get of him, although brief as it is that he was a relatively competent professor just in a very dangerous profession. Right? And here we're getting this portrayal that two different headmasters thought of him as being a little reckless. What do we have in Dumbledore's tenure? A professor that you could argue is
pretty reckless.
What
I found interesting was, I mean, we've had the conversation before, and I think it came from one of our comments, was how, like, nobody ever seems to get fired at Hogwarts, and people were giving Dumbledore a lot of grief, being like, come on, Dumbledore, you let people get away with everything. If you were put on probation 62 times, maybe you shouldn't have this job. Like, that's a crazy amount of probation. You would not have the job in the real world. I'm sorry.
In this amount of time, there had to be a Malfoy coming through there that got scratched by something. I would imagine. There's two questions that I think come from this. One, are they both bad teachers, Kettleburn and Hagrid? Or is the profession that they teach just inherently dangerous and reckless?
I would probably say the latter. Because, I mean, you're dealing with wild animals, and they're unpredictable. But I'm sure we'll get more into that when we talk about Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. Because, I mean, think of real-world animals. Like, try to have a zoology, like, class. I mean, granted, I didn't go into that major, but I'm sure there's a lot of precautions taken when trying to study, for example, like polar bears or tigers or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, I could say it's being pretty dangerous.
So this also brings up the idea of us being critical of Dumbledore as a headmaster and letting a lot of stuff go.
Mm-hmm.
He clearly lets a lot of stuff go. We've documented that over numerous episodes of this podcast. However, this now shines a light on his previous headmaster.
Mm-hmm.
As he was a teacher, the headmaster when he was a teacher was Dippet. Obviously, Dippet
made some mistakes.
Well, I wouldn't call them mistakes, but he has a long leash.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wonder if that is just a general tradition passed down from headmaster to headmaster to headmistress to headmistress. Like, do you give teachers of Hogwarts the benefit of the doubt because they're considered masters of their domain? Or do you give them a longer leash because you know they're dealing with magic, and magic at times can be unpredictable? Seriously.
And dealing with children.
Or I'm just wondering, like, how they deal with it. Because now it's not just Dumbledore. Now it's another headmaster that we know of.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering if this is just a long documented history, and this just ultimately is what it is to be at Hogwarts.
Yeah, I think Hogwarts just has a history of eccentric professors. Even the more tame ones as Sprout or Flitwick or McGonagall, they all have their eccentricities. And in this case, like where you have a wizarding drama club, maybe next time we maybe dial it down a notch or do something a little less dangerous, like engorging Ashwinders. Maybe not the best choice.
So here's the thing. And I just took blame off of Dumbledore, right? By saying, like, hey, look, maybe it's not his problem as headmaster that he let a lot of stuff slide.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just the tradition, and that's how Hogwarts has always operated, was you just... Stuff's going to happen. You just let it slide or deal with it as it comes. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. If that's the tradition of Hogwarts, then okay, fine, so be it. However, in this particular circumstance, you're talking about Albus Dumbledore is still on staff at Hogwarts. Even though he's just a lowly transfiguration teacher and not the headmaster, he is still at this time considered the dominant wizard of the age.
Yeah.
He is that dude, okay? And you're telling me this Ashwinder explodes. Girls are dueling to the seeming death. Professors are getting caught in the crossfire. The whole Great Hall is being evacuated because there's an inferno raging, and the greatest wizard of his age is what? Sitting on a stool?
He's eating popcorn because this is so entertaining to watch.
Like, he's clearly...
It is a show. It is a show within a show.
He is so capable of solving all of this, and he's just standing on the sidelines watching the literal school burn.
It reminds me of McGonagall and Flitwick and Snape all choosing not to help Umbridge because it's just so much fun to watch.
Okay, Umbridge deserved it. Poor Herbert Barry probably doesn't deserve this.
We don't know what Barry did to Dumbledore.
He started this whole commentary off with, I was so honored to be asked to be the special effects guy.
Yeah.
I know what it is. Albus was already building his spy network of portraits at this point in time. Okay? Follow me here. Follow me here. Dumbledore had already begun building his spy network of portraits.
Uh-huh.
And he knew this impending Amada Luckless drama was boiling. And he was like, ooh, I gotta get in on this. I need a front row seat to this disaster. And so he found his way into this. Yeah, I'll totally be your special effects guy. Let me get in on this. What? You need a shrinking hill? That's easy enough for me to do. Flick. And then there it is.
Do you think
Let me sit back and watch this disaster about
Do you think Sir Cadogan and like Nearly Headless Nick were being like, yeah, I saw him flirting with her, but yesterday he was hanging out with the other one. Ooh, pay attention. Like, they have to share the tea.
I'm just saying, I think Dumbledore knew full well what was going to happen, and he just wanted to watch the world burn for just one night. Just so happened that world was the Great Hall, but whatever.
Rest in peace to that drama club.
Let's move on from that random tangent.
I love it.
Dippet, not as lax as we like to believe, did actually impose a blanket ban on all future pantomimes.
Which is sad. I would love to see Wizarding Theater.
What is more sad is the fact that it has now become a proud, non-theatrical tradition that Hogwarts continues to this day.
Yeah.
So it's not just a tradition, it's a proud tradition that they continue. So they are very apparently anti-theater at Hogwarts.
Let's see more WADA. I want more Wizarding actors. Yes, please.
Elizabeth is volunteering to write the WADA fanfiction. We'll get right on that.
Maybe over the summer.
We'll get right on that. So Dumbledore continues in his commentary. He says that the Fountain of Fair Fortune is probably the most popular of Beedle's tales. However, more than one parent has demanded the removal of it from the Hogwarts library.
Shocker.
And my little note in here is, well, banned literature is usually the best literature.
Yep.
So if you ban something, more kids are trying to get their hands on it.
Oh,
so that
exactly.
Usually has the reverse effect. But anyway, I digress. One parent you might have heard of before, we may have talked about this person once or twice on the podcast, had a particular issue with the story. Lucius Malfoy submitted a written ban proposal of the story, specifically citing that any work depicting interbreeding between wizards and muggles should be banned. It's on brand for Lucius Malfoy, really.
Yeah, I feared it'd sully the purity of Draco's bloodline. It makes me think of Cursed Child, since we just read that, and how Draco's marriage, he had that comment about like not even caring about the bloodline anymore. So I find it interesting that here we get proof of Lucius already from the start pushing that bloodline.
Mm-hmm. Albus was not having it, though. He refused to ban the story, and that refusal was backed by the majority of the Board of Governors. So Albus's reply specifically included that purebloods maintain that status of pureblood by disowning, banishing, or straight up lying about the muggles or muggle-borns on their family trees. There is not witch or wizard in existence whose blood has not mingled with muggles. So, therefore, I consider your request illogical and immoral to remove the work.
I love his comment too. There's like, people like you, well, I'm not going to say you specifically, people like you are such hypocrites because you're asking us to ban the truth, which is truth that you are trying to deny because it's uncomfortable to your personal beliefs. So, no, I'm not going to take the truth away for your precious son because it is something that we know everybody has in their family trees.
So, after this rebuke from Albus, Lucius began a long campaign of trying to remove Albus as headmaster, which we see in Chamber of Secrets. He spearheads that movement. Albus, however, began his own long campaign to have Lucius removed from his position as Voldy's favorite Death Eater. Nice.
I love the footnote.
Yes, there is a footnote attached to this that says several letters from Lucius contained mostly opprobrious remarks on my sanity, parentage, and hygiene? Okay.
Lucius hits low.
Nice word usage there with opprobrious. All right, if we needed to remember that Albus was smart.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep. I love the comment, though, at the end about him saying it was his goal also to remove Lucius from being Voldemort's favorite Death Eater. Like, okay, sassy Dumbledore. And it's nice to have that as new context for some of the previous comments that Dumbledore has made. The one that came to mind for me was from Half-Blood Prince, where Dumbledore was talking to Harry and he was like, poor Lucius, what with Voldemort's fury about the fact that he threw away the Horcrux for his own gain and the fiasco at the Ministry last year, I would not be surprised if he is not secretly glad to be safe in Azkaban at the moment. It's just like, oh, Dumbledore, you know you are fully enjoying every second of this.
I think what we've learned about Dumbledore in this commentary is that he craves the drama. He is all about the drama. And I respect that.
Yeah, I do too.
I respect it.
I want more of it.
So I think this story is fantastic. The story of the Fountain of Fair Fortune, I think, is a fantastic fairy tale story that is very complete in its nature. It's satisfying. When you get to the end, you're like, yes, that hit just right. Like, this is good.
Yeah.
And then, look, Dumbledore's commentary is 2 for 2 so far. Like, 2 for 2 on fire commentaries that have just been pure entertainment. I am hyped for the next story and the next commentary from Albus Dumbledore, which we will get to on our next episode. So, if you have any comments about this episode, about the story, Fountain of Fair Fortune, or about Albus Dumbledore's love of the drama, let us know by commenting on any of our social medias, Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or you can comment on our episode directly on Spotify by scrolling down on that episode. You can find all of our social medias at Hogwarts a Pod, and also participate in the polls. Those polls are up for a very, very long time. So if you've missed one, you can go back and participate in it because we love seeing those results pop up. But I think we are ready to wrap it up here. Thank you all for listening, and we'll be back soon with another episode. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.